to get going. Fantastic. Cool. We're live now. So today we're going to be talking about first, how to know if your vagus nerve is either overstimulated or understimulated. Hint, it's neither. And also what the whole reset your vagus nerve thing means and why it's really inappropriate to claim that you can help someone reset their nervous system. We're going to talk about why that isn't what's happening, why that doesn't work, and why you shouldn't be doing it. So cool. All right, so first we're going to do the simultaneous squeeze. So that's going to be at 240 simultaneous squeeze. All right, cool. So you know the drill, simultaneous squeeze. We're going to do a Valsalva squeeze. So you're going to take a big deep breath in, hold it for, take a sip at the top, hold it for 5 seconds, and then exhale for 5 seconds. Ready? In 3, 2, 1, breathe in. Sip of air at the top. And squeeze, hold, squeeze. And exhale. Very good. Cool. Awesome. Hey, good to see you, Lori. And Shar and Sarah and TK and Wendy and all the people joining. So good. All right. So let's crack into it. First, basically, key thing to know about today's video is that we're going to be covering a couple misconceptions in the vagus nerve field that I see thrown around all the time that say, oh, I think your vagus nerve is overstimulated, or I think your vagus nerve is understimulated. And then we're also going to talk about the term reset your nervous system. And we're going to basically show why these ways of looking at something like the vagus nerve are based on a very simplistic, almost cartoon understanding of the vagus nerve. Now, we know that your biology is far more complex than a simple cartoon. So continuing to see your health in the context of cartoon characters is very inappropriate. And I think it's weird and wild that people on YouTube a lot are claiming this is going to help you reset your vagus nerve. And people are like, oh my God, I love this. Now, it's not like the things that they're doing aren't correct, but you're not resetting the vagus nerve. So I see a lot of misconception about, vagus nerve stimulation levels. So it's important to understand that the vagus nerve is not some simple on or off switch. Your vagus nerve isn't overstimulated or understimulated. Key thing to know here is that your vagus nerve basically is, the word vagus nerve refers to a huge collection of 250,000 individual strands that go up and down your vagus nerve, right? So let's get out there first. When we say vagus nerve, it's like thinking of it as one single individual nerve. That's not correct. There is no one nerve of the vagus nerve. It should be called the cluster bundle of nerves in your vagus nerve network. That would probably be the right way to say it, but I have no expectations that is ever going to change at this point, right? And I've probably contributed to, obviously, the naming of calling it vagus nerve stimulation. That is the medical term officially, vagus nerve stimulation. But let me know in the chat, right? Yes or no? Yes, by saying vagus nerve, it sounds like I'm talking about one single nerve, correct? Right? Just by the way it's said. Would you agree? Yes in the chat. If when we say vagus nerve, it sounds like a singular thing, right? That's why it's even hard for people to even make the switch into, well, when we say vagus nerve, they see a picture from the side of a cartoon of a body, and it's got one nerve running down the neck. They go, oh, it's that big one single golden nerve that runs down the neck. So when we tell them, right, Char, yes, when we tell them that the vagus nerve goes down your left side and your right side, I've actually had in the Facebook group people who argue with me that no. Vagus nerve only runs down the left side of your neck. There's only one vagus nerve. Because I've seen it in all the pictures on the internet when the person is turned to the side, is that there's one nerve running down their neck. It's one big golden yellow nerve. So right then and there, the way that the medical establishment is presenting the information about the nerve is inherently misleading to people that have no idea what is going on. So by referring to the vagus nerve as a singular nerve, it totally fucks with people's head and they think, oh, well, we're only stimulating one single nerve. No, the vagus nerve refers to a bundle, a big bundle, like a nerve bundle. And on the left side, there's 100,000 neurons in the vagus nerve. So it's really nerves, plural. It's the vagus nerves that you're stimulating. But it sounds a lot better to say vagus nerve stimulation, not vagus nerves stimulation. So right there, that's already where the miscommunication is happening. I'm sure of it, right? I almost want to be like, dude, do you know who the fuck I am? I run the biggest Facebook group in the world. I talk about the vagus nerve every day. I do work in biomedical technology to stimulate the nerve. I think I have a pretty good understanding that it runs down the left side of your neck and the right side of your neck, okay? Don't argue with me over this point, right? It's you're looking pretty dumb. So this is where it comes down to why it's so easy to say something like your vagus nerve is overstimulated or it's understimulated, right? It would make sense to say something like that, right? However, if there are close to 250,000 individual nerves running in the bundle cluster of the vagus system, not to say that your vagus nerve is overstimulated would be like saying 100% of the nerves in your vagus nerve cluster, all the neurons there, are all overstimulated at the same time. Although that's clearly not what we see. That never happens. That's not how it works. Your vagus nerve doesn't get overstimulated and it doesn't get understimulated. Some neurons individually in your vagus nerve cluster can have generally higher levels of activity, and some can have generally lower levels of activity, and that can be true at the same time. So you could have some neurons that have a lot of activity moving through them, and some neurons that have very little activity of them going through them at the exact same time. So saying something like, my vagus nerve is overstimulated is like, that doesn't happen, okay? So your vagus nerve is not overstimulated and it's not understimulated. You can look at certain functions that are connected to the vagus nerve and talk about, are they inside the bounds of normal healthy function, or are they outside of the bounds? And if they're at a certain level, that would mean that those neurons connecting to the heart are tending to have higher levels of activity or lower levels of activity, right? See, this is why I believe this video I'm doing will be the least viewed video I've ever made, because people don't want to hear any kind of explanation about how this actually works. They just want the quick shit. They like this is why they're like, well, just give me a pill, dude. Just give me something just give me the thing I put in my neck, right? It's like, well, you're not really looking for an understanding here. You're looking for a quick fix, the way that this all works. And I understand it. You know, it's the path of least resistance, obviously. But I think it should be at least said, somebody should say this, is that your vagus nerve isn't overstimulated or understimulated. So here's a good let's just say that the vagus nerve is a complex bundle of hundreds of thousands of multi-tiered, it's a network of communication lines like internet fiber cable. There's 100,000 of them that go from your brain and they branch off to different organs in your body, right? Yeah, today's world is a quick fix mentality. Exactly. So there are hundreds of thousands of individual neuron lines of communication in what we call the vagus nerve network, and some of them can be higher in activity and some of them can be lower in activity. An example I'd like to give that will help lead us into the example of when people say, I'm going to help you reset your nervous system, I'm like, are you fucking joking? Do you even understand how this works? Because clearly if somebody's selling you a line of goods that says like, oh my God, Char, I just saw your message. Hey, Jody. Hey, good to see you. Hey, better late than never. We're covering a really super, super important subject today. Part of the reason I'm doing this particular subject is because somebody in a SIBO group, we had communicated, and she kept on saying, I think my vagus nerve is overstimulated, or I think it's understimulated, and I'll be doing these videos on YouTube teaching me how to reset my vagus nerve. And I was like, okay, well, okay, so clearly there's a need to do this video. So if you think about the vagus nerve, it's 100,000 individual neurons that travel from your brain to different specific organs. There's 100,000 clusters on the left and 100 plus thousand on the right side. So overall, we're looking at over 200,000 individual neurons that fire and integrate and send information up independently of each other. They all operate separately from one another. So to say your whole vagus nerve is overstimulated is so dumb. It's like you clearly don't understand how this works. So an example that I think we can all relate to is, let's think of the analogy of the internet, right? So for you to be watching this video, my camera is sending electrical signals through my router in my home, which is traveling on long cables all the way to Seattle, Washington, which is being sent from cables from Seattle down to San Jose, down to Facebook, then to you, wherever you are in the country, to Indiana, to Ohio, to New York, to Florida, to Canada. So the whole internet is this massive collection, right? When we say the internet, it refers to the billions of internet cables that connect all of us. So would you ever say, you know what? I feel like the whole internet is overstimulated. No, you wouldn't ever say that the internet itself are overstimulated, or that the internet is overstimulated. You would say something like, for example, when at later in the day, between 7 to 8 p.m. on the East Coast, you see a spike in internet traffic just on the East Coast because it's 7 to 8 p.m. there. People have gotten off work, they're eating dinner, they're watching Netflix all at the same time. So you would say that the internet in that region of the country on the East Coast at 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right when we're doing this video, there's a lot of people sitting down to watch videos. So the internet in that part of the country has a higher level of activity, whereas on the West Coast, the internet activity is still relatively low because people are in their cars driving home from work. They're not home yet. So the internet activity of the millions of different internet connection cables is high in one area on the East Coast as you guys are watching your end-of-day content, and then the internet in the West Coast is still relatively low. But as time goes, that wave of internet activity will shift from the East Coast to the West Coast, and that will circle around the world. You literally see that circling around the world of that cycle of increased internet usage at certain times of the day, okay? So you're never going to say the internet is, guys, do you guys feel like the internet is overstimulated right now? Or is it understimulated? Is the internet understimulated? No. The internet can have both. The internet can be at high levels of activity and at low levels of activity. The same thing applies to the vagus nerve. Some parts of your vagus nerve, literally inside of one big branch on your left side or your right side, can have some fibers that are in high levels of activity and some that are lower levels of activity. So for instance, when you're eating a lot of food, the neurons that connect to your stomach are going to have higher levels of activity, and then the neurons that connect to your spleen are going to have lower levels of activity. High in the stomach, low in your spleen, low in your colon. But then as the food digests further down your system, you're going to have less activity in your stomach because you're not processing food, but higher levels of activity down in your colon, in your intestines. So the activity will shift from moment to moment, from day to day, from hour to hour. So your vagus nerve never is one single thing that is either overstimulated or understimulated, okay? So if you see someone using that, just understand that they're not trying to provide understanding. They're trying to simplify for the sake of understanding, but in that unfortunate process, they're more likely causing there to be a lot of confusion about the situation, right? Yeah, people are where they are. Nice to know so much, but remember, they don't know how it works. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah, Jody, exactly. So in traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about meridians, multiple meridians. They can all have different times that they're active or dormant. So you would never say like, my meridians are all overactive right now. I'm overstimulated, or that I'm understimulated. You'd have to say what part of the meridian network is higher in activity or lower in activity. Overstimulation only happens if you're actually stimulating the nerve with electricity. That's about the only time you can say this is overstimulated, or if you're taking a stimulant. So if you're taking a drug like, let's say you're taking like magical Bolivian marching powder up your nose. I don't want to say the word, right? I don't want to get blocked on Facebook or YouTube. So let's say you're snorting up Bolivian marching powder and it's actively attacking the neurons in your nose, stimulating those, and then you start having a seizure, then I'd be like, okay, he's overstimulated because he put some stimulant into his body. That's a form of overstimulation. But if you're like sick, vomiting, not feeling good, have brain fog, can't breathe very well, have diarrhea, you're not going to be like, I think my whole vagus nerve is just overstimulated because I heard that's an effect of that. No, it's not. It's so backwards to frame it like that. And I think that is a key term. I think that's a key framing to also understand where we talk about resetting the nervous system. Okay. So you shouldn't, and you should not try, and you can't reset your entire nervous system. Okay. The facts are this. Your neurons are always active. I think that this idea that you can reset your nervous system, again, is like people who have cartoon brain disorder, right? CBD, cartoon brain disorder, where they see a single two-dimensional line of a neuron, like something you would see in like a children's textbook on the brain. And they see this single neuron and it has like an on and an off switch. And they go, well, if something's wrong with the neuron, you just flick it on and off and reset. There you go. Good job. I just reset my entire nervous system. That's not how it works, right? This is not how the nervous system functions. Nothing you can do besides electroshock therapy can even come close to resetting your nervous system. Okay? Just because something feels good doesn't mean you reset your nervous system either. Okay? So we need to be way more aggressive in calling out or really just ignoring this whole movement on YouTube of people say, these are the best vagus nerve reset things you can do, right? We're going to reset your nervous system today. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not, right? You're going to do something that stimulates some degree of neural function that has an effect on my body. And if I feel better because of it, doesn't mean you reset your nervous system. You didn't reset anything, right? You always had persistence of consciousness throughout, right? I think it was with somebody in here. I was talking to them about, oh no, it was a client check-in over a video, I think. And one thing came up, which was that every day we lose millions of cells from our skin. So every day you lose millions of skin cells, and they just fall off and they're replaced with new skin cells. And every 3 years, all the cells in your body will be replaced with brand new cells. So in 3 years from now, the body that I'm in will not be the body that I'm in today. So, but there's still a persistence of me. 3 years ago, the body, if you see pictures of me from 3 or 4 years ago, every single cell in my entire body from 3 to 4 years ago is gone. It's not me that you see in that picture. And yet I still have the persistence of consciousness, right? There's no reset. A reset would be a reset, flashing your memory, resetting your consciousness. That's not happening. That if somebody went into a coma and woke up and they forgot their name and what their wife's name was and who they were and how to speak English or how to speak any language, I'd call that a pretty effective nervous system reset. But doing something like breathing and putting your hands on your chest like this, this is not resetting your nervous system. You're not resetting anything doing this. You're just doing things into your body. That's all you're doing. So can we stop saying nervous system reset? It's not a reset. Your vagus nerve isn't overstimulated and it's not understimulated. Your vagus nerve is hundreds of thousands of independent axons and dendrites that go up and down into your body. There's no one single time of day where your vagus nerve is 100% overstimulated or 100% understimulated. Certain parts of your vagus nerve, out of 200,000 neurons in your vagus nerve system cluster network, some of them will activate more often than different times of the day. That's as far as you could say, right? So, and then resetting would just be, again, just dumb. It's just a really cartoonish way to think about this nervous system thing, right? So if you're, again, think of it like the position that I'm in is as a care person. I'm having to analyze someone's like health situation and look at them through a complex framework and identify solutions for them, right? And so if I'm looking at a person as a cartoon nervous system situation, if I'm looking at them like a two-dimensional character, the solutions I'm going to come up with are super hindered for that. So if you're a practitioner, if you work in health, or if you're trying to comprehend your own care right now, and if you're buying into this completely antiquated cartoon model of the body where you're like, oh, no, you know what? I just need to reset my nervous system today. I think that's going to fix the whole thing. Again, what's the term called? Garbage in, garbage out, right? a cartoon representation of how your body works is garbage. That's a garbage input into your model. That's going to create garbage outputs for, the kind of care that you give, right? So, but again, I think this framing is the exact reason why, if your brain works like a cartoon, then yeah, of course it makes sense that this one pink SSRI pill, this antidepressant, is going to fix your depression. Because clearly it's simple, right? Clearly it's the neuron is lacking serotonin. And if I take this pill that boosts serotonin, then depression gone, right? So how far has that gotten us, right? I think I read today that 11% of Americans are taking antidepressants. They're taking 11%. That means 1 out of 10 people. So out of the 10 people that you see, 1 of them are going to be on antidepressants. Are people way more depressed than ever? Probably, maybe, yeah. But if those things worked, why do things seem to be getting a lot worse? I don't look at, when I think about the trajectory of America and where things are going, I don't look at it and go, yeah, we're headed in the right direction for sure. I think people are more resilient than ever. I think that all these chemicals that we're putting into our bodies, I think it's working. I feel really positive about this. I think the antidepressants are making a good difference. No, I don't look at that at all. I think I look at most of the country with a sense of almost horror, with a sense of, holy shit, this is going to take some radical course correction to fix, because this is not good. Yeah, Sarah, you got it. There's an aspect of mindset to it as well. So yeah, it's your mindset of how you see your body, how you see your vagus nerve is going to make a difference in terms of what you select, right? And knowing that your vagus nerve is hundreds of thousands of independent neurons is like, well, does that mean that I can fix it all within a couple of days? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean you can't fix it, but it means that if you have poor functionality in only 10% of the neurons of your vagus nerve, you're gonna feel it. But you're gonna focus on what's wrong. If something in your body isn't working, like if your digestion isn't working, that's most likely 10% of the neurons in your vagus nerve are not functioning the way they should, right? But you wouldn't then say, well, then 100% of all the neurons in my vagus nerve aren't working. That's not how you do this. You can't say that. You have to think, well, clearly if my digestion working, that takes up close to at most 10% of the function of the vagus nerve. And then there's a lot of other 90% of the other function of my vagus nerve seems to be working okay. How can I focus and target my solutions to the problem area, right? Because when people, here's the thing, go read, I don't expect you guys to do this, but please be my guest. Go online and Google electrical vagus nerve stimulation and search for multi-study overview. And look at what the biggest problems that they say there are when it comes to electrical stimulation of the vagus nerve. They specifically say the biggest problem that they have with electrical stimulation, which is why it can sometimes work for some people and sometimes it doesn't work for any of them, is because the electricity cannot specify any of the nerves that you're stimulating. So you have deteriorated function in 10%. and then you blast it with electricity, you are necessarily overstimulating 100% of the neurons in your vagus nerve. So yeah, if you have overstimulation in your vagus nerve, electrically stimulating it is overstimulating it. The whole thing by electrically doing it. So that hardly seems like a fix, right? If I looked at the country and I was like, 10% of the population is depressed, we need to start putting antidepressants in the drinking water for everybody to drink. That will fix it. That's about what you're doing when you electrically stimulate your vagus nerve. When you put electricity on your vagus nerve, you're basically saying that 10% of the 100,000 neurons in the left cluster of the vagus nerve, they're not functioning adequately. I'm going to stimulate all 100,000 of them to hope I can boost activity, right? That is why electrical stimulation is not a perfect thing. And again, look, I'm not the only one saying this. This is in all the papers that analyze electrical devices on the vagus nerve. Even the implanted versions, they have problems with it. They're constantly trying to figure out further ways in to stimulate the vagus nerve that can only stimulate the 10% that need to be stimulated. They haven't solved that problem yet with electricity. Do you know how they are solving it though? By placing the stimulator further down the branches of the vagus nerve down by the spleen directly, because then you can target the fibers of the vagus nerve that only stimulate the spleen, or that only stimulate the gallbladder, or only stimulate the pancreas. But that requires, think about the surgical procedure for electrical implantation. You have to have your whole chest ripped wide open to do that kind of an implantation. So naturally, it's just easier to kind of hand wave and say, yeah. Well, if you just electrically stimulate in your neck, you're going to get a good enough effect for it to work, right? So this is a big reason why I love ultrasound, because with ultrasound, you can stimulate parts of the vagus nerve in the neck and get some effects. But with ultrasound, you can also place it on the spleen right there without any surgical implantation required. If you want to stimulate your pancreas, you put the ultrasound on your pancreas. No implantation required. Electricity, unfortunately, cannot penetrate deeper into the skin to stimulate the inside part of the spleen to get those effects. So electrical stimulation is very limited by its penetration depth. It can't penetrate very far into the neck or into the body. So this is why, out of all the options, having ultrasound on hand is by far the better option. Absolutely the best option for activating the vagus nerve. So anyway, in conclusion, for the main purpose of today's talk, right? The big takeaway is that don't think of your vagus nerve as being overstimulated or understimulated. It's not either of those things. Your vagus nerve, the term vagus nerve it's a misleading term. The vagus nerve just sounds better, but the vagus nerve refers to a collection of single smaller neurons in bundles representing 200,000 nerves. So you would really say my 200,000 vagus nerves system. But that doesn't roll off the tongue very well. So we typically end up saying something like the vagus nerve. And that gives people the misinformation framing. They see it as one single nerve. They think that the nerve is either overstimulated or understimulated, but it's not. Some percentage of the 200 plus thousand nerves in your vagus nerve bundle are going to be above normal stimulation parameters, meaning they're more active, or they're less active. That's literally as far as you can go. There's never a situation, unless you're grabbing to electrical power lines and your entire body is being stimulated and killing you, could you be like, their vagus nerve is overstimulated? You know, if you ever seen that movie Home Alone, where the guy grabs the electrical wires and he's like, ah, ah, and you can see his bones and his hair's spiking up. That's overstimulation. That's the only time you could say that. And then on the point of resetting the vagus nerve, there's no such thing as resetting your vagus nerve. You're not resetting any of those nerves. Those nerves persist in activity no matter what you throw at it. You electrically stimulate those nerves, they're still activating. They're still alive, they're still on, they're still working. You cannot reset a cellular process inside of a neuron by breathing or touching yourself like this or putting your hands on your tum-tum. I've never seen a video on YouTube called Nervous System Reset where I've actually been like, you know what? As someone who's spent over a decade in the neuroscience field, studying how the brain works and how neurons work and respond to stimulation, I've never once seen a video on YouTube called Nervous System Reset and went, yeah, I think they're actually I think they're really resetting the nervous system. I've never said that. That is not happening. So you got to kind of start to figure out, well, what are they really doing? And you need to kind of abstract out, well, what is the actual thing? It's not resetting your nervous system. Now, it may feel good, but feeling good is not resetting. Resetting is pulling my computer power cord out of the cable so that the entire computer goes and then I plug it back in to reset it. That's resetting it. You guys want to see that? What do you think would happen if with my foot right now I kicked the power cable going to my MacBook, to my Mac Mini here, my Macintosh computer? What do you guys think would happen? Do you think my computer would go, oh, I feel so much better now. I just did a full reset. No, my computer would go, and the video would go and end, and the stream would be over, right? Right? Not wanting an NDE, yes. And that would be like that is as close to the concept of a reset as you can get, typically. I mean, and here's the thing. I actually know how to induce an out-of-body experience through vagus nerve stimulation. I actually do know the exact protocol to do that, but I wouldn't put that on YouTube. I'm not putting that out publicly. That's not. I don't believe that a real full nervous system reset would be that good for the vast majority of people. I think there's something fundamentally just weird and warped and backwards about all that stuff. So anyway, next time you see a video that says how to know if your vagus nerve is overstimulated or understimulated, you go, okay, that's kind of bullshit. That's a clear marketing technique. And then when you see a video that says this is a nervous system reset or a program to buy called Resetting Your Nervous System, again, just be like, okay, clearly cartoon version of how the nervous system works. It's a cartoon version. And could you potentially feel better by doing those things? Yes. But garbage in, garbage out. If I see a person's entire body as a cartoon character versus a more complex system, the kinds of results I'm able to get for them from a cartoon viewpoint is very limited. So just know that if you're doing the reset, the nervous system reset, or you're balancing out your nervous system from overstimulation, again, you are playing a cartoon game and you will win cartoon prizes. These are not realistic interpretations of how the brain and body works. It's just not what's happening. So just try to, avoid it or have some healthy dose of skepticism on this stuff. So anyway, again, I'm doing this because I did have a call with someone today who was desperate for help, and she's like, I need help, and you seem to know what you're talking about. I was like, okay, cool. I'll do a 10-minute call with you, no problem. And she's like, I just feel everybody's keeps on saying my vagus nerve is overstimulated, and I have so much anxiety and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, all right, clearly there's some misconceptions about how this all works. So yes, your vagus nerve refers to 200,000 plus neurons. 200,000 is a lot. You can't even count to 200,000 if you wanted to. And that's all fitting into just a very small area. One neuron is a lot smaller than the width of a human hair, right? So you have 100,000 of them. I don't even think you have 100,000 hairs on your head. So if you take all the hair on your head and let's say you have long hair and you take it into a long ponytail and you hold it like this, it's going to be pretty thick. That's not even 100,000 strands of hair. That's probably something more like 4,000, 7,000 pieces of hair. The vagus nerve is just the left branch of your vagus nerve, and there is a right side of your vagus nerve. There's 100,000 of them, and they're about the size of, think of a pencil. Think of a yellow pencil, and just think about the thickness of the lead, the graphite inside of it. That's about how thick the vagus nerve is. So you're fitting 100,000 neurons in that one small diameter. Another one here, this is something that I actually have at the table. So this is a headphone jack. This is something I use for audio. It's a dual-sided headphone jack device. You don't have to buy one. This is just something that I have for work. But this is a 3.5 millimeter jack. This 3.5 millimeter jack, if you know what this is, if you guys ever owned headphones, the kind of headphones, remember where you used to be able to plug headphones into your iPhone and then put them in your ear? That end here, the silver or gold end, that is about the right thickness. It's a little bit bigger even as the thickness of your vagus nerve in your neck as it runs down. Not this part, but just the tip. Just this tip right here. Very small. So relatively, you can see that? That's the width of the vagus nerve as it runs down. That's 100,000 individual neurons in that size fit into that. So yeah, your vagus nerve is very susceptible to inflammation, infection, compression. I mean, you guys kidding me? You think your neck pain is not an issue? No. Your cervical instability compressing against that sensitive of a device, that's like a detection device that senses like how full your lungs are, how full your stomach is, if you need to poop, if you're hungry, what your heart rate is, what your blood pressure is, what your levels of inflammation are. If you swallowed something down the wrong windpipe. This is all the function of the vagus nerve. It's a very highly sensitive thing. So anyway, take good care of it. But again, don't see it as this cartoon. It's not a single nerve. It's I would say it's pretty dang advanced. I would say we are so blessed to have such a beautiful piece of technological magic inside of our bodies. We have some of the most high-tech machinery, nervous system in the entire world, right in our neck, called our vagus nerve. It's a pretty remarkable thing that we have. It's pretty dang smart too, that it can do all that. So take good care of it, right? Show your vagus nerve some love tonight, okay? All right, so cool. Well, that will wrap it up for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully that now that this is out there on the internet, we can hopefully dispel some of these stupid ass rumors about the function of the vagus nerve. that it's overstimulated, or that the vagus nerve itself is completely overstimulated, which is like so absolutely ridiculous that people are thinking like that. And that, you're not resetting your vagus nerve, and you're not resetting your nervous system. Okay. These are just things that don't happen. So cool. Well, thanks guys so much for watching. I wish you guys the best of the best. And if you guys have any questions in the Facebook group, be sure to post them here in the chat, and I'll be sure to answer them as soon as I can. But yeah, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.